You are so awesome.
Hey guys, welcome to the Driveway Liberty Podcast. I am your Uncle Wes, and I'm here with my good friend Dan for our second week back after our little hiatus from hanging out with you guys. So, real quick up front, if you weren't here last week, we're no longer drinking on the cast, which is pretty amazing for us. We are trying to clean our language up, so this will be more digestible for families and friends who don't care for that sort of thing. And my good buddy Dan is hanging out with me, so all of those things could change at any moment.
There.
Dan, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well, Wes. How are you?
Man, I am. Man, I've been a little funky today, but I'm hanging in here. I mean, I have no doubt that we're in end times, Dan. So I'm trying to keep a good attitude about it.
Wait till we get to the nuts and bolts of what we're going to talk about tonight.
Right? Yeah. So you better get right with the Lord, is all I have to say about that.
For sure.
Speaking of that, man, we are blessed tonight to have a good friend of the show. He's been on the cast before, former school board candidate, and he is the current faith chairman for the local Republican Executive Committee. Our good friend, our pal, Gordon Porter. Gordon, what's up, buddy?
Oh, you know it. I am having a good time. I'm glad to be with you guys. Appreciate you having me back on.
Yeah, we're so glad you could join us. You've been really busy the last. You, like a lot of people on our side of the aisle, which is the right side, and by right I do mean correct, have been just kind of ignited over the last couple of weeks, thanks to, and sadly because of, a good man's death. And man, it's heartbreaking. And it's sad that it's taken something of that nature to kind of light a fire under folks. You know what I'm saying? You were one of the leaders of the Charlie Kirk Memorial in Defuniak Springs. Is that correct?
Yeah. So my wife and I spearheaded that. So funny story. So Friday, we basically had the plan in place to try something. We weren't sure exactly how it was going to play out, but we figured, hey, we don't want to wait too long. You know, eventually people are, unfortunately, we just, it's human nature. Eventually the news cycle changes, right? So we
Right.
wanted to do something pretty quickly. So we tried to turn it around the next Monday. So we were talking 2 days, 2.5 days here. And so I fully expected it to be my wife and my kids there at the courthouse lawn. That was, anything more than that was going to be a success. We had two different estimates. Some said 300, some said 350. I prefer the 350
Sure.
count myself, but by all metrics, north of 300 people showed up. We had the opportunity to give the gospel, and from what I could see visually, people who were willing to raise their hand, we had at least 4 claim salvation at that rally. So really, the whole point of that was to carry on what Charlie was all about, and that was first and foremost his Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And even further than that, we had the supervisor of elections, Ryan Messer, there with a table to register voters, and that was a key thing with Charlie's rallies that he had on campuses. Is he provided the opportunity to register to vote, and he didn't care. If you're going to register as a Republican or a Democrat, he provided the opportunity, and so we were able to do the same thing. And all things considered, I felt like it was a huge success. I hope it was a big honor to Charlie. That was what it was intended to be. And I was really impressed by the turnout of the local community. They for that many people in Defuniak, in the Walton County area specifically, to even know who Charlie was actually surprising to me. But to have them turn out in that kind of fashion was really encouraging.
Well, I tell you, man, I wasn't an avid follower of Charlie, but I'd watch his videos every morning drinking coffee, like his reels, his short form content. And I think I mentioned this to Dan when we did our test. We did a little micro test cast last week before we had Shane on. And I think I mentioned it to Dan. I was a casual follower. I used to get irritated as a debate style because it had always been my style that once you got to a certain point, you just drop the nuclear option and destroy somebody.
Yeah.
You demean them, you make them look bad, you make them look stupid. And in all reality, that's not how you win hearts and influence people.
No, that's exactly right.
You could walk around like a banty rooster and claim to have won the debate, but that does nothing but push people away. And so one thing that obviously I think a lot of us has dove a little deeper into Charlie's content over the last few weeks. And what I've really been impressed with is his patience. And
absolutely,
if nothing else, I think that's a lesson we could all learn with one another on both sides.
Yeah, well, absolutely.
He evolved. You could see if you spend any time. I know this is kind of the after effect, but you're still able to do it because a lot of his work is out there.
Right.
And if you go back to his earlier stuff, he was very impatient. He got irritated. People were super rude to him. But as he moved along, just like what you were bringing up, Wes, he developed a different style. And look at the end results. I mean, that last rally had over 3,000 people. And the grand majority of people, probably 95%, were there to support him.
Right.
As opposed to in his earlier work, 95% of the people were there to try to throw him off campus.
Right.
So that's a testament to him growing and him and understanding the effectiveness and literally a visual to make the point you were just making, Wes.
Yeah, and
go ahead, Gordon. I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. I do think, to speak to that a little bit, I think his objective changed. He actually spoke that or mentioned several times that around 2020 during COVID, basically, that he became, he's always proclaimed Christianity or claimed Christianity, but he became a little bit more married to it, I guess. And it's around that time, I think that change happened. His objective changed. It became less to do with politics, and he started using politics as a tool to bring people to Christ. I mean, and that was his words, And so I think, to Dan's point, he's exactly right. He did grow and he did change. And I think he attributed that change to, to really the aftermath of COVID, which is incredible. But
So you guys are both familiar with Crowder.
yeah,
And Crowder used to do, I mean, he's the changed my mind meme,
yeah, that's right.
And he, hold on.
That's not me. That's my dog.
That's the dangers of doing this. It's still the driveway element. Hold on.
We did one show, Gordon, and it rained, so we did it in my kitchen, and it was a horrible rainstorm, and then the rain stopped, so we let the dogs out in the backyard, and Travis would call Luna, my female dog, a velociraptor, because she literally tried to scratch through the window of the back door while I was sitting on my kitchen table trying to record. It was pretty funny.
So what I was saying, all right, so Crowder used to be a lot rude. I mean, he quit doing it because of the death threats. But he's been inspired to take his show back on the road and start doing these things again. And I watched one of his first ones this morning. And used to, Crowder was like I was. He'd get to a point he'd try to win a debate, and then he'd destroy you. He'd make you look stupid. And I saw him sitting there with a young lady this morning, and I don't know where he was. It was just kind of in passing. And one thing I noticed about his demeanor was that he was a lot more patient with the lady he was talking with. He still won the debate. He made great points. He brought logic to the table. He looked to have changed her mind on the issue they were discussing. And I don't even recall what it was. But he, through his patience and his kindness, seemed to actually sway this young lady. And I don't feel like I'm old enough to be saying terms like young lady and young man. Apparently, I am at this point.
Can't deny reality.
Yeah, well, I'm still in my mind. I'm still 12. So
you act like it, so we're good.
Yeah, that's accurate. That's an accurate statement. So along those same lines, along the faith line, and I want to get into Christian nationalism in just a moment, but you are the chair, the faith chair of the REC. Now, forgive me. I was a committeeman on the REC committee at one point. I don't recall a faith chair. So, what is your role in that with the Republican Executive Committee here locally?
Sure. Yeah. So that position technically exists in the Republican Constitution of the state of Florida, but Walton County, just I guess never had the seat. I don't know what you want to call it, but the seat opened up. I was blessed enough to take that. But essentially, my goal, for years, churches have been very adverse to political, taking a political stance, and rightfully so. I mean, 40 years ago, there wasn't enough difference, morally speaking, between a Democrat and a Republican for a church to take a stand and mean it. But I think that time is well past. I mean, we're to a point now where what the Democrat Party stands for, regardless of what their actual written platform says, which is on its own is terrible, but even beyond that, what the leaders of their party are saying on a daily basis is purely immoral. I mean, and I mean that from a biblical perspective, but also just a normal common sense perspective. I mean, it's completely upside down. And so my job is kind of a couple of fold, I guess. One of which is to let people know in the local churches that there is a local Republican Party that they can be, a part of and help make that change. But also part of it is to kind of help remove that stigma of, it's the Republican Party is a political party. There's not a real faith bent to it. And I think in large part that's been the case for 20 or 30 years at least, where, I think one of the biggest swings and a miss, if you will, of the Republican Party over the past 40 years is we've played this game of trying to separate morals and where morals come from. We're separating morals from the Bible, from Jesus Christ. And that separation has actually caused, it's put the Republicans in a position to where, now we're in this game of, morals are relative. Well, they're not. They're absolutely not. And the Republican Party, I think, is moving in a good way towards taking a stand in that direction, because you can't divorce the two. There has to be an authority that gives you those morals. Otherwise they are relative. And
Well,
so,
and that's you and I made one comment on the thread, but you and Dan, probably Dan more and Allison more than anybody, were heavily engaged in the library debate on your post.
yeah,
And
I
I read
started it and
Monday. I
selectively
sat
backed
down.
out.
I read all 300 some odd comments.
Oh, bless your heart.
Yeah, and I was. And what I said, I think I said this last week to Shane, and I've said it to Dan a couple of times. Until we can agree on that fundamental moral base, it's futile to
That's
try
right.
to debate with these individuals.
That's
And
right.
what was happening in that debate after I read through them the other day is Dan was making a point that these materials, and Dan wasn't even arguing in removing the materials from the library. He's saying they shouldn't be in a prominent place because that's
Right.
racism.
Right.
And I absolutely agree with that. However, if you don't see anything morally reprehensible about that,
Yeah.
you are not going to agree with Dan that it's activism.
Right.
So until we can agree on that moral foundation, I think it's I won't say it's a losing battle, but it is more of a battle than a debate.
Yeah, and I think that's what, it makes what Charlie was doing even more important, because he was, rather than just beating somebody down to win the argument, which I'm prone to do, he was changing the mind, and that's a completely different work. That's a big objective to do that, but he was doing it. I mean, he did it by the hundreds of thousands of people. And I think that's the Republican Party is going to have to head strategically, whether that's locally or nationally. It's going to have to change into a game of, look, we're never going to beat them in an argument. We're never going to win in the battle of wits, because we're on two different planets. That you're dealing with two different two different playing fields there.
So, that begs go ahead, Dan. I'm sorry.
Well, there's something that I want to add to this, and this is why I continue, even to Wes's point, where it's not a losing battle; it's a waste of time in certain respects. Is there's more people that are watching or reading those things than just the idiots arguing.
Right.
Whether it's me in their eyes as an idiot or them in my eyes as an idiot, there's other people that are reading that, just like there's other people that are watching Charlie's videos.
Yep.
And as long as you, and I've come a long ways, even though I still have a long ways to go. I used to be like Wes. You say one bad thing about me and the nuclear option comes in, and it is full-throated just destruction.
Right.
And I won't stop until you're freaking in a fetal position crying. That note doesn't sound, it makes me feel good, but it doesn't impress anybody,
right,
or change any hearts or minds. So I've tried to actually continue arguing the point, and you can tell it, Wes, if you read all 300, you listen to me repeat myself over and over and over again. And it's literally just the fact that those things are not appropriate to put in the front of children's eyes.
Right.
If they find them naturally in the wild, if they happen to have a kid in their class that's in that situation and ask mom and dad about it, well, that's how it's supposed to be brought up.
Right.
But for you to put that in a 7 or 8 year old's mind because you put it on the top shelf displayed in the children's section of the library, to me, that is horrible. It's activism. And then their argument is, well, there's gay people in the world. Why are you so afraid of gay people? I'm not afraid of gay people at all.
Right.
But you shouldn't be teaching 6-year-old kids about your sexual preference in the children's section of a public library. That's literally the whole point.
Right. If it's their argument is, well, it's perfectly natural, it's perfectly normal. If that's the case, then propaganda is not needed. If it's perfectly acceptable,
you don't have to promote it if that were true. It's
exactly
not
right.
true.
Exactly right.
If it were true, that you'd be able to procreate that way.
Exactly.
And you
right.
can't.
Yep, that's exactly right. Yeah, I can't remember if it was you had posted a meme or who it was, but somebody posted recently. If you put transgenders and homosexuals on an island and
that
leave
was
them there
it.
for 100 years, you come back in 100 years, they're all dead. But if
Yeah,
you put
110
a man
skeletons.
and a woman, yeah, you put a man and woman on an island and you come back in 100 years, you get a civilization. It's
Well, there's some humor to that too, because it's 100 women and 10 men. You come
well, there
back
you
to
go.
a
Yeah,
flourishing
you're
society
right,
of
though.
men,
Yeah.
women, children, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah,
It only
but
takes 10
that's
men
right.
to take care of business.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yep, that's right. It's putting a rooster in the hen pen.
Right.
There
Exactly.
you go. It only takes one, right?
That's right.
That's it. So I didn't want to, and Dan even mentioned he didn't want to get into the library stuff too much.
Yeah, but it's not
But it-
just about our library. It's in general. It's happening.
Well, the thing is, if it's in Walton County,
Yeah.
one of the
Yeah.
most conservative counties on the planet.
Right.
And
Um,
a sleepy little town inside of Walton County.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's out there.
To your point, Wes, so if you go back and look at some of those comments and actually click on who it was reacting or commenting, whatever, there was I'd say 20 to 30% of them didn't even live in the state. I mean,
Yeah.
we're talking Pennsylvania, Washington, Oregon. I don't know how they found it. I don't know if they just, have a keyword search or something and are looking up LGBT, whatever, but
They are.
yeah, I mean,
They're activists,
yeah.
man. They're activists.
They are
Yeah.
paid activists. They're sitting in the house and they're paid to troll conservative posts.
yeah,
And
that's right.
And to Dan's point about you're not just arguing for the debate, you're arguing to empower individuals who may be on the fence or may
Exactly.
be or may just be silent about things. You're letting them know that there are other people out there that feel like us. And
That's
I think
exactly
one
right.
of the biggest things about social media over the last 10, 15 years is the fact that they have done their best through the censorship in YouTube and the censorship in Facebook and Twitter before Elon Musk bought it, was to make conservatives feel like they were on an island by themselves. They were in the minority opinion. Their opinion was wrong. And it's just basically social activism via all of these troll farms that are out here doing it. If you ever looked at when Matt Gaetz was still congressman, anytime he made a comment on Twitter or Facebook, all these trolls came out of woodwork, and it's always the same comments.
Yep.
It's about pedophilia or something along those lines. And I would look and see where those people were from. Maybe 1% of the people making those comments were actually living in Florida.
Right.
And even less than that were in his actual district.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
And a lot of that purpose, it's deflecting those comments, are taking the argument in a completely different direction and getting you off subject. And they're very, very good at misdirection and moving you off of those kind of things.
Yeah.
And then the other part I was going to say is, listen, if your ideas stand on their own and they're really the best ideas, why do you have to silence the people who don't agree with you?
Right. Well, and that's part of the reason why, my wife was like, well, why don't you just turn the comments off? But really, I wanted them there, and just from Dan, to your point, a discussion wasn't even being had. It was name calling. It was flame throwing. They didn't even attempt a conversation before getting there. It became to immediately discredit. And, to Wes's point, people watching that from the stands and watching what's going on, just the difference in demeanor between even the original post. I was not coming down on LGBT whatever. I was simply saying that it was unacceptable to have that in the public library in the kids section. That's all I said. Yeah. And if you go through and look at their comments, I mean, they called me everything, which I'm fine with. Call me what you want. I don't care. I'm a big boy, got thick skin, but at the end of the day, man, it's like, I want the comments there because it lets the people in the bleachers see that there is a stark difference between not only a Republican, but just a normal American, a patriot, and somebody who is actively trying to destroy Western civilization. It's very clear in those comments.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. I want to speak to, this is my good friend who's also a podcaster in South Florida, Smoking Joe Phillips. He runs the Cracker Culture podcast. And he made this. He was attacked today by Northerners about the renaming of a Florida street, which I assume is the Charlie Kirk Highway. Is that correct? Us if we're wrong, Joe. Let us know. But Joe's a good
This was
friend.
the Cracker Barrel podcast. What was that?
It's the Cracker Culture Podcast. Here,
Yeah,
I'll type
okay.
it in the comments so you guys can look it up. It's a great show. And I'm tell you what, old Smoking Joe, man, he's a fireball. He is a fireball, and he doesn't put up with anything down there. He goes after them, and he doesn't put up with it. And he's got a co-host that's a Washington pundit, and they shuck the corn, brother. They do.
That's
and
awesome.
you think we've got corruption in our county? They've got it's almost mirrored, except their counties are bigger than ours.
Yeah. If you're from Florida, you can call it a crack up podcast, but if you're outside of Florida, you have to call it cracker. You have to hit that hard R. Yep.
There's a new saying is where there's government, there's corruption.
That's right.
That's why it's everywhere. It's everywhere.
Accurate. So accurate.
A necessary evil.
I don't know that it's necessary.
Yeah.
I'll push back on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we're 8
I'm
days.
not an anarchist, but minimalization is the key to success.
Well, absolute power corrupts absolutely, and I think we're seeing that regularly.
The most small and limited government is the one I'm in favor of. I don't. The Federalist Papers is where I begin and end. Right? If it's even beyond that,
I'm not in favor of legislating morality, and let me explain this because that sounds hypocritical to what I was talking about earlier. I am in favor, and we're getting into Christian nationalism here. I am in favor of recognizing the moral principles in which this country was founded on. And they were founded on biblical principles. Now, do we go out and tell what grown people, as long as it's not harming somebody else, what they can do at their house? I'm not in favor of that. But I am in favor of recognizing the fact that we have a moral basis, if not. And I think Charlie Kirk made this point, and I feel like I'm quoting him a lot in the last couple of weeks. But without that morality, our system can be exploited. And I think we're seeing that in Detroit. We're seeing that in New York with its impending elections. We're seeing it in Minnesota. We're seeing it in Chicago. And they're using those freedoms and those liberties that were founded on those Christian principles against us.
They're also using the Christian religion connotation to attack it, saying it's not fit to be in the public square. They argue the religion as the morality piece so that they can stick that knife in there and twist it and say, hey, listen, they did it on our argument about the library books. It's like, well, you can't impose your religion on me. Well, I'm not imposing my religion on you.
No,
it's morality, and morality is religious based, but it's also a foundation for having a functioning society. So you either agree to live within that scope or you don't. They're labeling it religion in order for them to be able to use it as a wedge to keep politicians out of that realm.
Sure.
And to be honest with you, it's pretty freaking devious. Yeah. It's also, we're allowing it to happen, and it gives them a foundation to try to attack things that just are unattackable. It makes this stuff is like, this is just crazy stuff.
Right.
Like, do you hear about this isn't a part of our list, but you had they call it a prominent cross-dresser that was going to be a part of the gay pride parade in Arizona, was arrested for having sex with a 13-year-old boy who we met on a dating app. The kid lied about his age. And then he told the cops it was too dark in my apartment and I couldn't tell he was 13. 13.
Oh my gosh.
Now,
this is not a one-off.
Right.
This is the culture.
Yeah.
These people are sick.
Yeah. Yeah. And to push back on Wes a little bit here as far as legislating morality, I think it depends. Sometimes you have to, for example, prostitution is illegal, and the reason being for that is the natural byproduct of that is going to be children who have to then be protected. And so
Slavery is the byproduct of that.
Well, and notice what I said, as long as it doesn't
things,
impact anybody else.
Yeah,
that was my qualification for that. So
sure.
just-
Yeah.
That's why murder is illegal.
yeah,
You can't kill somebody because you're
Yeah.
violating their rights.
Right.
absolutely. I'm sorry, I'm reading Joe's comments about the people who were attacking him about the street name. Apparently, they were wanting to rename Summerlin Boulevard, which is named after a historic Floridian, to MLK.
And apparently the people attacking him were from Massachusetts, New York, and Ohio.
Yes,
Of course.
absolutely.
Why do you care what's happening in Florida?
Right.
That's what we're talking about. These people, look, man, I'm not conspiratorial, but maybe I am. But I would imagine Soros is floating some checks out there.
Oh, he is. It's down to, there's all kinds of evidence about, district attorneys, even at the local level, that Soros has got money in those pockets. There's trails of it. There's paper trails of it.
Yeah. Sorry, Joe. I think vice versa is what I meant to say in regard to which street was what. So that being said,
you got some content, Wes, right?
I've got some content, dude. Look, hey, did y'all hear about Katie Porter? Speaking of Porters.
Oh, yeah. Thank God I'm not related to her.
She's a gubernatorial candidate out in
She's a
California. And I'm going to set this up a little bit. Well, actually, I'll make the comment after we watch the video. I'm going to pull up the video here. And apparently,
I don't think you need to comment. This is going to take care of itself.
Apparently, I've got to do this right here.
This is new software for us, everybody.
Yeah.
Here we go.
What do you say to the 40% of California voters who you'll need in order to win, who voted for Trump?
How would I need them in order to win, man?
Well, unless you think you're going to get 60% of the vote. You think you'll get 60%. Everybody who did not vote for Trump will vote for you. That's what you're saying.
In a general election, yes. If it is me versus a Republican, I think that I will win the people who did not vote for Trump.
What if it's you versus another Democrat?
I don't intend that to be the case.
So how do you not intend that to be the case? Are you going to ask them not to run?
No, I'm saying I'm going to build the support. I have the support already in terms of name recognition. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to do the very best I can to make sure that we get through this primary in a really strong position. But let me be clear with you. I represented Orange County. I represented a purple area. Mm-hmm. I have stood on my own 2 feet and won Republican votes before. That's not something every candidate in this race can say. If you're from a deep blue area, if you're from LA or you're from Oakland, you don't have an experience.
But you just said you don't need those Trump voters.
Well, you asked me if I needed them to win.
So you don't
I
think
feel like this is unnecessarily argumentative. What is your question?
The question is the same thing I asked everybody, that this is being called the empowering voters to stop Trump's power grab. Every other candidate has answered this question. This is not
correct. And I said I support it.
So, and the question is, what do you say to the 40% of voters who voted for Trump?
Oh, I'm happy to say that. It's the do you need them to win part that I don't understand. I'm happy to answer the question as you have it written, and I'll answer it.
And we've also asked the other candidates, do you think you need any of those 40% of California voters to win? And you're saying, no, you don't.
No, I'm saying I'm going to try to win every vote I can. And what I'm saying to you is that...
Well, to those voters, okay, so you...
I don't want to keep doing this. I'm going to call it. Okay. Thank you.
You're not going to do the interview with us?
Nope, not like this. I'm not. Not with 7 follow-ups to every single question you ask.
Every other candidate has answered.
I don't care. I don't care. I want to have a pleasant, positive conversation, which you ask me about every issue on this list. And if every question you're going to make up a follow-up question, then we're never going to get there.
Ms.
And
Porter,
we're just going to circle around.
I am an investigative
I have never
reporter.
had to do this before, ever.
You've never had to have a conversation with
to end an
reporter?
interview.
Okay, but every other candidate has done this.
What part of, I'm me, I'm running for governor because I'm a leader. So I am going to make...
So you're not going to answer questions from reporters? Okay, why don't we go through? I will continue to ask follow-up questions because that's my job as a journalist, but I will go through and ask these, and if you don't want to answer, you don't want to answer. So nearly every legislative
I don't want to have an unhappy experience with you, and I don't want this all on camera.
I don't want to have an unhappy experience with you either. I would love to continue to ask these questions so that we can show our viewers what every candidate feels about every one of these issues that they care about. And redistricting, it's a massive issue. We're going to do an entire story just on the responses to that question. And I've asked everybody the same follow-up questions.
What a sweet woman.
Yeah, isn't she just a sweetheart? Here's
Everybody who votes for her is just a dumbass.
we before we took our hiatus, we had a segment called "Effed Up Headlines." Now, why they were effed up is because they were slanted against the right. They were so slanted, and we would rewrite the headlines and we say this headline should say this, and this is such a great example. All right, so here's what's going on here, in my opinion. Y'all chime in after I throw this at you. All right, number one, the media has gotten where they're trying to be a little bit more honest in their representation of what's going on, because now that the power has realigned, there's a real concern on their part that they're about to be held accountable for what happens in media. Number two, this politician is so used to the previous way the media treated liberal politicians that now that she's being questioned or being called on her BS, she doesn't want to participate in it. Am I wrong?
No, you're right. Their arrogance will be their undoing.
And
I want to have a positive experience here. Of course you do. That's all you've had for the last 28 years.
Joe just said what my thought was, is like you cannot answer the question. The follow-ups are all right, you responded this way, and then, all right, well, you don't need those votes to win.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do. You do.
Yeah.
You do some of them.
Yeah.
And then they don't have a proper response to that. And to Joe's point, most of them are not smart enough to think of those things on the fly. So then you pout like a freaking child.
They've never had to know those things off the fly.
But when your party owns the entire PR structure, you don't have to worry about those things, because if you think about the 60 Minutes interview with Kamala, where they cut and dice that up to make her look better. Or you remember when DeSantis went on 60 Minutes a couple of years ago, and he had video footage from a cell phone to prove what he said. Yep. And he called them on their BS. The media has been their PR arm for years. And now they're feeling a little heat because they are scared that they've played a part in this rhetoric where
they're getting fired right and left.
People are getting fired right and left. So they're like, oh, we better at least ask a couple of harder questions when we talk to these people.
At some point, the people who have the money for those businesses realize that they need people to watch.
Yeah.
They need an audience in order to pay the bills.
Right.
So you can kind of run for a while without needing that, but eventually it runs out.
Yeah.
So these media companies, to your point, Wes, yeah, there's a new sheriff in town. You're going to be held accountable for the crap that you're doing. But there's also a business side of it of, listen, you can't continue to do this because the American people are onto the gig. They get it now to where you can't pull the bullshit. There's a certain percentage of cultists who are going to believe whatever they say, and that's it. And then the majority of people, the people who actually win elections for you, see this. And you cannot live in a world in which you're playing one side and you're presenting yourself as a independent, honest journalist. So even though the questions she was asking were not pointed and difficult questions, the follow-ups were not. The follow-ups seem rough because your response was so freaking stupid that the follow-up is like, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah. I mean, look how far you've come. I mean, sorry to interrupt you, Dan.
No, you're good. You're good.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, look at how far you've come since Barack Obama in 2008 to, there's no red states, there's no blue states, there's just the United States, to now, hey, I don't need that 40%. Screw those guys. We don't need them. Like, let them go fall off in the Pacific. I mean, it's unbelievable. The mask has completely come off of these people.
Yeah,
and thank God.
We're deplorable, and we don't deserve to be alive.
They are entitled and deserving to the crown.
That's exactly right.
That's where it's at. So along those same lines, let's talk a little bit about January 6th.
Some Republicans, Mr. Director, argue that Nancy Pelosi staged January 6th and the Select Committee covered it up. Based on what you personally know, what are the verifiable events in the lead-ups? And do you, I know you don't speculate, you just deal with facts.
I'm in a unique position. Remember, I was Chief of Staff for the Department of Defense on January 6th. We were responsible for the deployment of the National Guard. And what I was forced to testify to years ago at great personal cost has now once again, just like Russiagate, been proven true, because all I do is speak the truth. On January, actually in the days before January 6th, we were in the Oval Office where the President Trump at the time, authorized, pursuant to law, up to 10 to 20,000 National Guard. We took that authorization because the law's second part required a request from who? Nancy Pelosi and the Metropolitan Police and the mayor at the time. And what did they say? No. And remember what happened for the next 2 years? They say, oh, Cash is lying, Trump's lying. And what did we find? Letters of their declination of the National Guard, refusing to have the National Guard show up. So all I can speak to is the facts, and the facts are those plus this. Nancy Pelosi and her team were busy filming a movie on January 6th while this so-called chaos around her was going down. If she had, just look at it this way, if she had said yes to the National Guard and we had 10,000 uniformed military officers establish a secure perimeter, do you think January 6th would have gone differently?
It is intriguing that 250 FBI plainclothes agents were inside the Capitol on January 6th.
Listen to this.
I saw the president's tweet to get to the bottom of it. Who placed them there? What were they doing? Were they inciting violence? What can you tell us, Mr. Director?
This is a great example of the president's initiative to solve all the answers on January 6th. And it's another example of our transparency efforts. Pursuant to the president, we investigated the matter and found out why FBI agents were placed there in the first place. And it turns out we found documentation and witnesses and whistleblowers that said we were forced to go there to do riot control. Armstrong, do you know what the FBI does not do ever? Riot control. We don't do that. So the prior leadership sent 250 some odd men and women into a situation they're not trained for, put them in harm's way, put the individuals out there in harm's way. And also, those individuals have collectively responded or said beforehand that they were forced to go there. They didn't volunteer to do that.
And you believe them?
That's their word, not mine.
250 FBI agents forced to go, plainclothes, with no training in riot action. Why? I mean, so this, can y'all hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. So this speaks to absolute power. This speaks to maintaining power, capturing power, and obtaining certain goals regardless of what you have to do that. One of the differences between conservatives and liberals, and I don't know if it was Dan and I talking about this the other day or if I was talking about this with somebody else, is that conservatives have a rule book. We have a moral code. There's a way, yes, we want to be able to get our ideas out there, and we feel like our ideas are better and we want those to be enacted. But we follow a certain rule book, a code, a moral compass. Liberals don't care what they have to do to obtain their goals.
The ends justify the means.
The ends justify the means. And whatever those means are, if it's lie, cheat, steal, kill, whatever, they're willing to do that. And that's, I think the data is there to prove that theory because it's so obvious. What do you guys think about that?
Oh, you're absolutely right. That's what just happened to Charlie Kirk.
Absolutely. And then they claim that we weren't inciting violent rhetoric. We weren't. No,
here's what I think happened on January 6th is they created an environment in any way they could to get the people there to perform what they wanted them to perform through their natural acts or being pushed, etc. It's like giving 13 kindergartners a box of matches, a gallon of gasoline, and a bunch of coloring books. And your end goal is to have a fire.
Yeah.
Eventually, you're going to get a fire.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's what January 6th was.
That's exactly right.
You created an environment and you took away all the safeguards.
Yep.
To prevent it from happening, which is his point about the National Guard. He said it. If we had 10,000 troops there that had a secure perimeter, January 6th doesn't exist.
That's right.
Everybody goes home, does their speech, rah-rah, sis kumbah, and goes home. There's nothing. They wanted this to happen.
Sure they did.
Not only that, even after Charlie Kirk's murder, they are still using violent rhetoric.
They're ramping it up.
Ramping it up.
Gavin Newsom's calling people out. I mean, it's assassination by proxy at this point.
Oh, you got some violent rhetoric here. Holy shit. Ooh, shoot.
Yeah, come on, Dan.
Holy sugar, honey, ice.
So Jay Jones, who is a candidate for Attorney General in Virginia, these are texts that somebody disclosed. I don't know who the recipient of these texts are. He literally said, if those guys die before me, I will go to their funerals to piss on their graves, send them out awash in something. And the guy's like, Jay Jones, 3 people, 2 bullets, Gilbert, Hitler, and Pol Pot. Gilbert gets 2 bullets to the head. Spoiler alert, put Gilbert in the crew with the worst 2 people you know, and he receives both bullets every time.
This guy's running for AG, Attorney General.
Attorney General. Somebody who is supposed to be the chief law enforcement officer in the state of Virginia.
Unbelievable.
Then he goes on, and I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. Where is it at? I'm trying to read it on the screen. You were talking about hoping Jennifer Gilbert's children would die. So not only did he advocate that for Todd Gilbert, who was a former whip or party leader for the Republicans in Virginia, he's also an advisor to the House Republicans or the legislative Republicans up there. He was not only hoping that he would be dead, but his kids would be dead at some point. I didn't get all the text. And, you would think that other party leaders in the Democrat Party, especially on the federal level, would just be disavowing this and saying, you know what, I don't want any part of that. But this is what they're doing.
Really not familiar with the situation in Virginia.
Do you think the Virginia AG candidate Jay Jones should leave the race that he's in?
Time at the moment. Thank you.
Okay. Did you see those texts though that he sent? The violent text messages. Jay Jones, the AG candidate in Virginia, should resign after those violent texts that came.
How many times have we seen that silence is consent?
Yep.
And just after all these calls for unity, we need to call for you. The rhetoric's amping up after Charlie Kirk's death. Who was saying that?
They don't have any way to spin it to their advantage, so they ignore it.
Man, I tell you what, I am really, honestly fearful for what's coming real soon in this country.
I'm honestly completely disgusted with the leaders we have in our country who they just don't know right from wrong, or they do and they just choose to not abide by it.
Right.
Like they don't stand up for any. Like, it's all political, 100% political. It's what can this do for me? What can it do for my party? What can it do for my agenda? And if it doesn't, I can't step across the line. And so you get people walking by, legitimate questions, people walking by, and they ignore. It's insane.
Yeah, I would think about the perspective, though. I mean, if the goal,
Democrat thing,
right?
The Republicans do it too.
Yes.
Going back to the previous conversation of morals and and where those come from. If I'm looking at the world through Adam Schiff or appropriately named Dick Blumenthal, there responding with silence, the reaction there, I think it tells the story of their perspective a little bit. I think they believe that they're on the moral right there. They're actively they're doing things to destroy the Western way of life. I mean, one of my first, foreign policy memories, on this earth was watching videos of Saddam Hussein statues being pulled down. They're running the same freaking playbook now that they did back then. And, over in the Middle East, where, you plant all these seeds and then you start putting actual CIA agents, or in this case, FBI agents, in the middle of all that to stoke all that up. The next thing you've got is regime change. And I for one, am convinced it's the same playbook they're trying to, they're trying to run.
But
you're absolutely right.
They know right from wrong. They know this is not right.
I think they do, but
I honestly believe they know it's wrong and are okay with it, which makes them evil.
That's fair. Yeah, I think you're
you
right.
Can't. Listen. Our politicians aren't the brightest people in the world, but nobody's that unintelligent to understand right from wrong. Now, there's certain areas where we talked about earlier with the adult sex stuff that there's some blurring there because of you can justify deviant acts in a twisted mind. But this stuff, we're talking about Chuck Schumer and Dick Durbin and those guys, they know what this person said was wrong. They're not going to talk to it because it hurts their agenda. They don't want to give you a headline to throw out there. But to your point, Gordon, it is absolutely a playbook.
Yeah.
They are absolutely trying, and I've said this for years, they're trying to not destroy America, but weaken America on the world stage enough so that America can be just like any other country, and we get a version of the European Union across the entire globe.
Yeah,
that's what they want.
To that point, Dan, I think that's where you're saying I think that they know that what they're doing is wrong. I'm not so sure. I mean, if you go back and look at what Barack Obama was talking about and read his book, he actually believes that the American way of life is morally corrupt and evil. I mean, I think that they feel like that they're on the right side of the ballgame there.
Well, I think it's a caliphate. It is a caliphate, and the thing is, all right, if we just kind of reason this out to the end game, they're utilizing the Islamic community to further their means. But if they win this struggle, I'm not going to use the term war or try to stay away from violent rhetoric. But if they win this struggle, what happens then? Because Islamic folks throw gay people off and behead them. They throw them off of buildings. They're not allowed.
What happened
they
to
do more
the
than
brown
just
shirts
post about
in Germany?
libraries.
Yeah.
What happened to the brown shirts in Germany?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
They used the gays and the Kassoff in Germany as their Gestapo, and then when they got power, they killed them.
That's right. The brown shirts are in the same hole the Jews are.
Yep. Absolutely. That's absolute truth. Well, if we're looking for a way to combat this stuff, I think Pam Bondi is showing us a path right now. Let's watch this.
The word is, and I think it's been confirmed by the White House, they are going to transfer Texas National Guard units to the state of Illinois. What's the rationale for that?
Yeah, Chairman, as you shut down the government, you voted to shut down the government, and you're sitting here, our law enforcement officers aren't being paid. They're out there working to protect you. I wish you loved Chicago as much as you hate President Trump. And currently, the National Guard are on the way to Chicago. If you're not going to protect your citizens, President Trump will.
So that is probably the tamest of the clips from Bondi's time in the Senate over the last few days. She is just, man, she has blistered every liberal that's asked her a question. And she's bringing up White House's ties to Epstein. She is just butchered them. And really, if you can't sway them, you've got to go after them where they hurt. You have to embarrass them like that. And
so there's some value to what she's doing, obviously.
There is. Now she's avoiding questions too. If I call it like I see it. She is purposely avoiding certain questions. Deflecting is what we call it in debate. However, you know what? I mean,
that seems to be the strategy, because you get your time in front of Congress, in front of the camera, on the record. Your job there, in a lot of people's eyes, is you're going to get your message out, whatever that may be. And sometimes it's answering questions because, depending on the meeting you're in, or the whatever the word is, the congressional hearing you're in, maybe to, get answers about January 6th, a crime, something, those kind of things. In this regard, it's really just to try to make your political party look bad.
It is great.
So when you're in Pam Bondi's situation, they're there to make the Trump administration look like criminals. They're not. So Bondi's doing the right thing by just driving her message home. Ignore their idiotic deflections and their loaded questions to try to take you in a different direction. I'm all for, in those situations where it's not a fact-finding mission. You're there. They're there to make.
They're grandstanding and trying to make a point. Play the narrative is what they're trying to do. And I mean, she was talking about Chicago. I purposely pulled that clip up because it was about Chicago. It's about Illinois and about the crime. Before we talk about this, I mean, I think we already mentioned this. Illinois has a law that prohibits state and local law enforcement from helping in immigration matters. It also prevents the detaining of illegal immigrants for the federal government. Chicago has a new rule in place that is going up. I mean, it's escalated that particular law. And this may be why. Let me pull this up here, see if I can get it to come up. So Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson, this is a quote, "Extreme right in this country refuse to accept the results of the Civil War. They have repeatedly called for a rematch." Now, let me point out something real quick.
That's so stupid.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Democrats were the ones who lost the war. I live in the South.
He's looking at it like, hey, we're in the North right now. Yeah. We're in Chicago, so we won. It's like, no,
that's not how it works. It was the Republicans who freed the slaves.
That's right.
So he signed an executive order to create ICE-free zones. So what that means is ICE, when they come into Chicago, they cannot use any publicly owned city property to stage, to plan, to detain any of the criminals that they capture. So what that does is it forces the ICE agents to do it in other areas, such as willing businesses that'll let them use a parking lot, etc. But it also it enables the violent protesters access. It limits the amount that they can plan and secure, because in most cases, you do it in a Walmart or a Walmart parking lot. You can't prevent the public from looking over your shoulder while you're making plans on who you're going to get. So It enables them to use these apps that they have to identify ICE, which gets the violent protesters, the Antifa idiots out there. So you're putting federal agents, law enforcement people in danger. You're putting the actual people that they're detaining in danger because they aren't able to do it the right way. And to be honest, this is nothing but a bullshit grandstanding crap that this mayor's doing, because all this stuff is unconstitutional.
Yeah.
Well, not only that, but I've read earlier, and I didn't have time to kind of incorporate it in the cast, is that the mayor has set up ICE-free zones.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Now,
I thought that was a microwave.
I was running show stuff.
You weren't paying attention. It's okay.
If I am the commander of the ICE, group there, first place I'm going is the ICE-free zones.
Yeah.
I'm busting in because that's where they're at. He's gathered them for you. Just go and get them.
That's right.
Larry Snelling, who's the chief, I think they call him superintendent. He's chief of police in Chicago. He's actually the only man making sense up there in the city of Chicago. He came out today and said, look, if you attack a law enforcement official, if you block them in with your car, if you hit them with your car, you're breaking the law, and we will intervene. So he's actually coming out and making sense, because they are still law enforcement officials, and it is illegal it should be illegal to attack anybody, but it's Chicago. But he's saying that you if you do that, you're going to jail, and he listed the felonies that will go with that. It's considered attempted assault if you hit an ICE vehicle with a car. Yeah. So hopefully he's the voice of reason up there right now. And the only thing these mayors in Portland, the governor in Oregon, the governor of Illinois, what's his name? Krispy Kreme,
Pritzker, cheeseburger Pritzker.
And the mayor there they're inciting additional violence. They are empowering their communities to incite violence against law enforcement.
My point on January 6th, that they created an environment where violence happens.
Right.
They're doing that. This is the purpose of it. They're creating an environment where violence happens in regards to ICE doing their job. And their political position on this after it happens is blaming it on Trump.
So we've been fighting Gordon on this show.
People blame Trump for Charlie Kirk getting shot.
Sorry, Gordon.
No, that's all right. Yeah. I what's crazy is to that, in this conversation, the fact that Illinois even has laws like that, I don't even think is constitutional from federal level. I mean, immigration is purely a federal issue. I don't even understand how they're able to make that case. I mean, I would think that now, granted, the rusty, trusty wheels of the government in motion, is going to take a while for anything to go through the Supreme Court. But I can't imagine that not any Supreme Court, but particularly this Supreme Court, I think there's the right majority to weigh in on that. But I mean, there's no way that illegal immigration, and specifically illegal immigrants, I mean, if let's say they were parading around with firearms, that's a big distinction, but and nonetheless, they're still illegally here. It'd be it's a foreign and what I would call an invasion. That is the federal. That's really one of the very few things the federal government's here for, is to protect against foreign and domestic enemies. Yes. But specifically foreign in this case, whether or not they're armed or not is beside the point. The fact of the matter is they are here and they're leeching off the backside of society. Whether they've been here for 25 years or not is beside the point.
Have you seen the videos where Kristi Noem's out there questioning some detainees where, she got to get a translator because most of them don't speak English, and they're like, they've been arrested, and they're arrested and charged in their home country. In a lot of cases, they've committed the same crimes here, where they're child molesters.
Right.
Like she's got them on camera saying what they've been arrested before.
saying
So
what they
isn't-
practically impeached Trump for by saying that Mexicans are rapists. They practically impeached the guy over that,
Yeah.
back in 2016 or 17.
And
But-
imagine we have to do that. We have to go out there and a cabinet member has to go out there and interview people they're arresting to create a social media narrative that is the opposite of the garbage they've been spewing over the past 12 years.
Look, all I ask for is equal footing to discuss issues in a fair field. You know what I'm saying? I want that, and I truly believe that conservative ideas would win every time.
And that's why they don't allow it. That's why they don't argue it.
That's right.
That's what you saw with that. What was the Jabba the Hutt lady? What was she running for?
Karen, or what's
Katie.
Oh, Porter, cousin
yeah.
Katie. Yeah.
Cousin Katie.
Yeah, that's why she didn't want to answer the questions, because they don't want to. They can't win the argument.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's why they have to shut you down. And that's why they have to create situations like January 6th. That's why they have to have ICE-free zones. Like there's no argument that we should allow a illegal immigrant who has raped children to be allowed to be in our country.
You could have just stopped after immigrant.
That's exactly right.
No, but
illegal immigrant. Yeah.
Illegal immigrant.
Yeah.
In first, they've already broken the law.
Yeah,
that's right.
Sure, but if that was the only argument we were having, then it would be a completely different discussion. That's the argument they're trying to make it, that nobody's illegal, blah, blah, blah. But the reality of it is a significant portion of these people are very, very dangerous individuals.
Yeah.
So we've been dominating the conversation. So, all right. So let's talk about some of the initiatives you've got going on here, Gordon. You obviously are spearheading turning point chapters in our schools here in Walton County. What does that look like? How does that process work, and how can we, as a podcast and our listeners, help you do that?
Sure. No, I appreciate that. And yeah, I'm doing my best to help. Obviously, I don't work for Turning Point or anything like that, but the Turning Point representatives, specifically the Club America, which is Club America, the distinction there being its high schools, but our representative for our region is in Birmingham. And so her territory is huge, right?
Sure.
So what I'm trying to do is just push people to her, letting people know that I'm here to help. And then whenever they come to me, I just say, okay, well, here's her number, which is Maddie Lawrence. By the way, you can look her up on Facebook. She is our representative for Club America. What I've been trying to do in that situation, I'm not in school. I'm not a teacher. I'm not in the administration. So my effects are somewhat limited by that, other than just, trying to be a loudmouth on Facebook. But my goal is to, you have to have a sponsor. You have to have a teacher sponsor. You have to have a student that's ready to get dirty and actually do the work.
Right.
That's really what it takes. But in addition to that,
to your knowledge, do they have resources and training for, say there's a student at Walton or one of the other schools that wants to do something like this? Do they train these kids to help start this chapter and help give them the support? Because I remember I was chairman of my college of Republicans, and unfortunately, other than having a monthly meeting where we just sat around and complained about Democrats, there was not a lot of resources for us, or training, or whatever.
Sure.
It was basically just a networking organization where we network with other Republicans from other colleges and universities. So
right.
For these things to be effective, I would imagine, there should be a playbook for these kids in these schools, and how to recruit and how to become should be leadership training and obviously the spiritual side of it, and how to influence and how to, argue.
Right.
And from a debate standpoint, not in domestic issues with your spouse.
Yeah, no, they do not provide like in-person training or anything like that, but there is a template that they give you and that you can follow. And that's what, that's what most choose to do, is take that template and run with it and develop it how they want to. But, I think the biggest thing is just, the good news is, as far as the administration is concerned, and that would be from, Mr. Hughes down, there's been no resistance to this whatsoever. It's been more so of an education thing of what's going on. Kind of a lesson learned on my part here was that principals want to know what's going on. A teacher is not going to make a move without the principal knowing. And so, without having the principal being, educated on what it all entails and what it means, the teacher is not going to be as likely to step up and sponsor. And so that's, part of what I'm trying to do is get in front of principals and get a conversation where I can, albeit, it's, again, I'm an outsider, right? I'm not in school,
Right.
I'm not in administration, so it's tough. But that's really the play is, if you can get the teacher and a teacher sponsor, and a student that's willing to take off, having them drive that bus is what's important. I think, in my own experience, sure, you want to start a Club America, that sounds great. But if I'm 16 years old, I have no idea what that even, what's that going to take?
You're absolutely right. Yeah.
And so that's where I'm trying to be somewhat helpful, is to say, okay, well, here's the process. Here's the person you need to get involved with, whether that's a parent or a teacher. Thankfully, I've had, and I say thankfully because I think it's important, students have not been the ones reaching out. It has been the parents, and they're saying, hey, my kid is interested. How do I get involved? And so the parents are they're equally important in this, because it's going to take some encouragement on the kid's part. Again, speaking as a former 16-year-old, I'm not doing a whole heck of a lot without some parental encouragement, for the most part.
Sure.
And so, I don't want to overstate my involvement too much here, the Turning Point thing, although I am doing my part, I think, as much as I'm able to do, given the situation. But, we have been pretty successful, I would say, at this point. And we're 3 weeks removed from the assassination. So not a lot of time at all.
Right.
In that time, we've seen a jump, and I'm sure y'all have seen the stories on this. We've seen a jump from about 3,200 requests for new chapters up to we're over 100,000 now,
Nice.
nationwide. So if that continues, if that actually bears fruit, you're talking about a chapter in every single high school in the country, is what that means. And so I know for a fact, just in Walton County, there's maybe, with the exception of 2 schools, maybe even 1 school, I've had somebody, whether that's a parent or a teacher, reach out to me and want to get started, want to get involved, and I've sent them to Maddie Lawrence, again, who works for Club America. And so the desire is there. My hope is that this is far different from 9/11, where this is a flash in the pan and something that in 6 months from now, everything that's been built fizzles, and so that's the other part of what I'm trying to do, is help keep that moving. Part of what I'm doing to help try to do that is we are starting a Young Republicans Club here in Walton County. And so that's specifically for 18 to 40-year-olds. And then you can have auxiliary members above 40 years old that can be a non-voting member. But part of helping keep that momentum and really parents, for most, school age kids are probably going to be less than 40, or at least in that, close to that age range.
Sure.
And so having an outlet for both of them and keep involved and keep things moving, there's so much of a lack of enthusiasm, just because you look around. I mean, you're in Walton County. Where are you going to go? What are you going to do? You feel like your hands are tied. And so I'm just trying to be a megaphone and trying to help people understand that, look, despite what that Facebook post about the stupid library, we're not a minority. The conservative mindset, the conservative ideology in Walton County is far and away the majority here. Sure. And so it's easy for people to resign themselves and say, oh, well, I can't do a whole lot about that. If you feel like, if you're not the majority, you're not an overwhelming majority. The flip side of that is you can get apathetic because you feel like you are the vast majority. And we saw that was not true with the Facebook post. That we are a majority, but it's not. There are still plenty of people here that would much rather see Walton County be a blue state, or a blue county.
Well, it's the vocal minority, and they, like I mentioned earlier, they want you to feel like you're on an island, you're alone in your thoughts and ideologies. They want to shut you down like that, and it's a cult mindset, and I don't mean that we are a cult or they are. But the thing is if they make you feel like an outsider, you're going to act like an outsider. You're going to close your mouth. You're going to stop talking. You're going to feel like it's useless to even express your thoughts. And I personally want to encourage everybody that watches this and everybody that to go out and talk to your friends about politics.
Absolutely.
I was sitting at a place the other night where I was playing. I won't name it because they may not appreciate me naming it. And there's a gentleman down at the end of the bar who was talking politics. He was from Tennessee. And at first he was talking religion. You're not supposed to talk about either of those things in a bar. But he started talking about religion, and he says, I like my pastor because he says everything I want to hear. And my ears perked up because that's not a pastor's job.
No, that's a problem.
And I'm like, wait, you like him because he says everything you want to hear? You like everything he says? Because that's not the way Christianity's supposed to work, my dude. You know, you're supposed to have your toes stepped on from time to time, and we're supposed to, be led to be better people.
That's right.
And, he didn't really appreciate that very much that I brought that up. And the appearance was on his face, but that's never stopped me from opening my big fat mouth. A few minutes later, his friend was talking about politics. And then the guy that was talking about his pastor before, he said, man, we shouldn't talk about religion and politics in a bar. And I said, actually, I think that's the problem.
That's exactly right.
We don't talk about politics and religion enough.
That's right.
And I said, I'm sorry to intrude on your conversation. I realize it was none of my business, but we are in a public space and I overheard you. And I feel like if we talked about religion and politics more often, face to face, this world would be a better place.
No, you're exactly right. And I mean, think about it through this lens for a second. We just had, Charlie Kirk's memorial a few Sundays ago, and you had the Secretary of Defense, or Secretary of War, I guess now, and the Secretary of State talking about Jesus Christ. Like, I've never heard Marco Rubio talk like that. I've never heard Pete Hegseth talk like that. And I think even JD Vance said it at one point of, I've talked more about Jesus Christ in the past 2 weeks than I ever have in my entire life. And, something that I had mentioned at the Charlie Kirk memorial, and something that was, a pretty convicting thought for me was, it didn't take somebody getting assassinated for Charlie Kirk to do his thing. It didn't take him having to watch somebody get shot to be a world-changing person. And shame on me for having to watch that to make me get off the couch, but that's what happened. To your point, we don't talk about it enough. And I think that's changing. And, if I'm doing my part to change that, I hope. And
that's awesome. And we want to encourage you and help you in any way we can. Smoking Joe, I'm your friend, buddy. We can talk politics anytime you want to. We kind of do every time we get on the phone, but
Joe, I don't know you, but it sounds like we'd be friends too.
We're probably going to get Joe on here in a couple of weeks. I was actually going to reach out to him and see what his schedule was like over the next few weeks. He's fighting a lot of battles down there in his area, so he is
that same conversation with my wife, because everywhere I go, the subject comes up, just because somebody will say something like kind of a sideways insert, and you're expected in polite society to just not say anything. Not me. I go full bore, and my wife does not like that. And I told her, I said, listen, if we had these type of conversations more often, they would just be a normal part of life and they wouldn't be so contentious. We'd actually be able to discuss this stuff in a normal, civilized manner. But you keep making me shut up, and then every time I get to talk, everything comes flying out of my mouth, so it's your fault.
You gaslight her? Damn.
Yeah, I totally gaslight her.
Well,
my wife just sits back and rolls her eyes and makes fun of me, is what she does.
If anything, over the last, we've had a string of assassinations, or at least attempts in some cases. But if that hasn't taught us anything, it should teach us. They want you dead, whether you say the truth or not, whether you're bold or not. you might as well just say it, because they're going to try to kill you either way. You know?
Right.
And so that was my key takeaway after Charlie Kirk was, I mean, he was the nicest guy. You know, he was gentle. He was trying to change people's minds the right way, and they shot him. You know, they killed the guy over it. I mean, if me sitting on my couch and just being reclusive, if they knew what I think, they'd have me dead too. You know, and if you want to let yourself get into a literal 1984 scenario, that is precisely what 1984 was about. Was, you know, scare you into where, you know, I think eventually they're going to find out, and they're going to torture you to death and kill you anyway. So you might as well just say the thing, you know, and do it.
Amen. Yeah. That's the absolute truth. Well, we are starting to run up against some time. I've got a delivery to make, and I got to go pick my daughter up from work here in a minute. Dan, did you want to talk about this real quick before we call it a night?
I think we need to talk about this Supreme Court. Yeah, that's the one. So, and I wanted to talk about this because this seems to be right up your alley, Gordon. And this is a lot of what we talked about earlier about making an argument that is inherently logical and call it secular, call it just normal society. They turn it into an argument where they're trying to keep, their version is they want to keep religion out of a way in which a therapist can talk to their patient. So you're talking, the scenario here is you've got a therapist who a young person, teenage person would go to them and listen, I don't feel right about my body, yada, yada, yada. You have these normal adolescent kind of thoughts. You're not comfortable. Hormones are flying left and right. And this person uses she calls it a faith-based conversation with the person, but it's really, and they're attacking the faith-based part of it, but it's really just nature. It's just normal. So they're calling it for this person to talk to the person about, listen, you're in the right body. You're just having these thoughts.
Right.
Write it out. Let's talk about it. Let's go through, and we'll get you through this stage of your life. And then you'll move on into your 20s and everything will be okay. They're calling that conversion therapy.
Right.
Which is what they use to attack when a faith leader has a conversation with somebody who's attracted to a same sex. They call it conversion therapy instead of just, hey, let's talk about being normal.
Yeah.
And so Colorado has created a law that does not allow them to talk about it in therapy.
Yeah.
And now it's in front of the Supreme Court. And it looks like, and even I shared with you both a Fox News article and a Politico article, so you can read kind of both sides of how they're spinning it. And both of them have pretty come up with the answer is, yeah, this is going to get overturned.
Yeah.
Because it's absurd. Like, you can't tell a doctor how to interact with their patients.
Right.
And they're calling it a regulation to be able, you know, their time is no different than regulating an accountant or somebody else like that. It's like, no, that's not the case here.
Right.
So, I don't know. Did you have a chance to read the article?
Yeah, I did. And I read both of them. And I think my takeaway from it was kind of what we were talking about earlier. It highlights the divide in morality, you know, because if the shoe were on the other foot, they absolutely, you know, they want therapists, they want doctors. They're actively promoting them to talk to kids, to trans them, you know, and to talk them into all these other, you know, other sort of things. And so it just comes down to it's a complete divide in worldview. You know, the reason that this, you know, the lady, the faith counselor, taking things from a faith perspective, the reason she's in hot water is not because she was talking to kids or talking to questioning teenagers. She's in trouble because of what she was saying. You know, that's the hard part for them. That's the part they don't want to see.
If she was counseling, should have been private anyway.
Exactly right.
That's
exactly
part of the
right.
legal argument with it too.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
part
I
of
mean,
what they're arguing against, because the counselors, attorneys are the ones that brought this, challenging the Colorado law,
right.
and the law, the support, or the process, or the defender, I guess you would call it, the attorney for Colorado, is like, listen, this is just us regulating business. We're allowed to regulate businesses.
Right. So
And
does that mean
that argument's getting its ass kicked in the Supreme Court?
Yeah, I mean, if that's the case, I mean, if somebody passes the bar, then the state government can tell you what you can and cannot say in the courtroom. That's ridiculous. It's, I don't know. It's
they call
more
it a
crap than
professional
Colorado.
oversight. That's the quote.
Right.
Professional oversight.
Right. Which, I mean, I think that goes to, I know you guys and Dan especially, you tend to be, on the smaller side of government, and I am there too. Having a license to do, couch talk,
Dan especially.
Well, you too, yeah.
Smaller than Dan does.
So far, Dan's the one that brought it up, so I'll attack him for it. But no, I mean, to have a license at all, to have that sort of conversation, let the free market handle that. If you're a bad therapist, you're not going to be in business very long.
Thank you. And that applies not just to therapy or even faith-based initiatives in therapy. That applies to all business.
Right.
If there's a contractor out there screwing people over, guess what? He's not going to stay in business in that area very long.
That's exactly right. Regardless of the DVPR complaints, he's not going to be in there very long.
Right.
It's another example of them attacking this on a religious basis. They attack that like you're not a therapist, you're using religion to try to change the mind of an adolescent who's
guilty as charged
situation.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
And if your argument, see, that's the thing, is like, if your argument is religion doesn't belong in this sphere, the public sphere, whether it's government, schools, whatever is funded by.
You've got to regulate every pastor and priest on the planet.
Right.
Because I can tell you, we didn't go to counseling when I was growing up. We went to our pastor and we were like, hey, pastor, I'm having this issue. And, pray about it.
When the church is not doing their job, and I don't mean any particular religion, I mean the church as a whole. The religious leaders in our country are not doing their job. Right. Look at the Pope.
Right. If you want government to do less, the church has to do more, and that's what has to happen. And that, whether that's the homeless
100%. problem,
whether that's the starving kids problem, if that whatever you want to call it, if the government is going to do less, it does not take some an attorney to go to Washington D.C. to change that. It takes local churches, small churches, to get into their community and open up a little bit and help do what we're put here to do. The church has got to do more. I mean, that's period, end of story.
Listen, in reality, their worldview is religious. It's just
exactly
as religious as ours.
But it's secular.
But it's on the opposite side of that religion.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
They'll argue against it.
Yeah.
They'll say it's a fairy tale. Yeah. The devil doesn't exist. It's a fairy tale.
So
whether you believe that or not, it's still evil. Your worldview is evil. And your worldview is religious. It's just the freaking mirror opposite of.
I tell you, we had security at the Charlie Kirk rally up in Defuniak, and it was not because of the mosque that was down the road in Chipley. It was because we were concerned about these leftists, in the area. We weren't worried about the Muslims. We were worried about these nuts. I mean, they're the ones killing people right now. They're just as easily radicalized by their religion.
They'll bust them in.
Yeah,
you get a situation like that big enough, and they will bust them in.
That's exactly right.
Absolutely.
To try to get you to be violent.
Yes, that's right. Sounds familiar. Sounds a lot like January 6th.
That's what Antifa does. They get in your face and they harass you as you're walking down the street. I don't know if you remember the video. They did it to Dan Bongino and his wife.
No.
This was one of the. I think it was maybe before the last election, where they had a fundraiser dinner or something, and Bongino was walking with his wife, and there was kids on skateboards with the hoodies and the black masks that were saying some rude shit to Bongino's wife. wanting him to
Right.
punch him. They antagonize you to the point where you want to strangle him.
Right.
And then when you do that, then you're the bad guy, and they can paint it all over social media that I was attacked by a Christian white nationalist. So they use they attach the religious connotation to it.
Yeah.
And paint you out to be the bad
Here's
guy.
the good news with that. That was Malcolm X's tactic, but it turned out to be MLK's tactic of peace, and having that public perception that you and I were talking about of, their demeanor is their undoing, their arrogance is their undoing. That is precisely why MLK won the civil rights debate, was because people like Malcolm X were taking the opposite approach and trying to bait and switch people.
Well, it's just like with these ICE protesters. They're out there enticing these guys and trying to get pushed, trying to antagonize them, getting in their face, spitting in their face. Where's your warrant? Blah, 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 blah. And they're trying to get these guys to act. And their buddy's standing there with a cell phone, and they've already tried this where they have edited it down. Well, ICE protesters are hitting American citizens. Well, the American citizen attacked the ICE protester.
Right.
And fortunately, they've got body cams and other people filming who are a little bit more intellectually honest than these individuals are.
Right.
Guys, we got to call it. I'm sorry.
All good.
Gordon, how do people find out more about the Young Republicans? They go to the Walton County Republican Executive Committee page, or what?
Yeah. So look me up on Facebook, Gordon M. Porter. I've got, I'm paying for the blue check mark, so you should be able to find it pretty quickly. So look me up there. I'm keeping regular updates posted there as well. We don't have a Facebook page set up yet for the Young Republicans. However, if you will keep an eye on the Walton County Republican page, they are sharing most of my posts as well to keep the county informed. Come to the REC meeting in October 21st. I'll be there and I can share what I can. Turning Point will be there. Club America will be there. It's going to be a really big event. I would encourage you to come if you want to get involved.
And that's at the Hammock Bay.
No. So we actually, we moved. So we're at believe it or not, Freeport has a community center now.
You're right. Across from the Masonic Church, right? I mean, the Masonic Lodge, not church.
Is it? No, well, no. So it's actually, where the tax collector's office. There's kind of a strip mall there on 20 and 331. Mm-hmm. It's there. So that's where our events are held every month. I tell people,
it's where they have the county meetings when they're in Freeport.
Yes.
That little strip mall right on the corner.
That's right. That's right. People have reached out asking me what they can do. My advice is to, start local, get involved in your local party. That's going to be where it's got to start, and furthermore, actually, let me back up a minute. The first place to get involved is to go to church. And I can't emphasize that enough. That is the place you want to start. If you want to get involved and you want to change America and you want to change the culture, which is the most important part of all this, you have to get into church and not just sit in the pew, but actually be, an active member, actually do something to help your pastor, actually do something to help your community around your church. And then from the political side of that fence, you want to get involved in your local Republican Party. This thing changes at the local level. It is not going to change. God bless Donald Trump for what he's done. He's one man, and in 3 years, who knows what we're going to have again. If you're going to change things, you got to do it at the local level. But that's my spiel, guys. I really appreciate the time to talk about it, and thank you for having me on.
Yeah, man, and hopefully it won't be so long between times you're on.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to the next one.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, for Dan, I am Wes. Thank you again, Gordon. We will see you next time on the Driveway Liberty podcast.